The colonization of what is now the United States was a complex and multifaceted process that spanned over 2 centuries. It involved a variety of European powers vying for control of the North American continent, the displacement and destruction of indigenous peoples, and the establishment of colonies that would eventually form a new nation. From the first settlements to the formation of the United States in 1776, the story of colonization is one of conflict, survival, and transformation. Early European exploration and the first settlements. The story of U.S. colonization begins with the arrival of European explorers in the 15th century. Christopher Columbus's voyages in 1492, sponsored by Spain, opened up the Americas to European exploration. While Columbus himself never reached the land that would become the United States, his expedition sparked a wave of Spanish exploration and colonization across the Caribbean and parts of the southern U.S. In the early 16th century, the Spanish established colonies in Florida and the Southwest, including St. Augustine, founded in 1565, which is considered the oldest continuously inhabited European established settlement in what is now the U.S. The Spanish also explored much of the southwestern U.S., Mexico, and the Great Plains. The English and the rise of the 13 colonies. By the early 17th century, England began establishing its own colonies along the eastern coast of North America. The first successful English colony was Jamestown, founded in 1607 in Virginia. This settlement, sponsored by the Virginia Company, struggled initially but eventually prospered with the cultivation of tobacco, a crop that became a cornerstone of the colony's economy. In 1620, the Pilgrims, a group of English religious separatists, established the Plymouth colony in Massachusetts, seeking religious freedom. This marked the beginning of a broader English colonial effort that eventually spread along the eastern seaboard, with colonies such as Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and the Carolinas established over the next several decades. French and Dutch colonization efforts. While the English focused on the eastern seaboard, France and the Netherlands established their own colonies in the Americas. The French founded the colony of New France, primarily in Canada, but also explored and settled parts of the Mississippi River and Louisiana. The Dutch established New Netherland, which included parts of modern-day New York, New Jersey, and Delaware. Though both the French and Dutch colonies were short-lived in the area, their presence contributed to the diverse European influences in early American history. The role of slavery in the transatlantic slave trade. One of the darkest aspects of American colonization was the establishment of slavery. The transatlantic slave trade, which began in the early 17th century, brought millions of Africans to the Americas, with many ending up in the southern colonies. Slavery became deeply intertwined with the economic success of colonies such as Virginia and the Carolinas, where the labor of enslaved people supported the cultivation of crops like tobacco, rice, and later, cotton. The system of slavery persisted and expanded, fueling the development of the plantation economy, and creating deep divisions between the North, where slavery was less prevalent, and the South, which relied on it. These divisions would later contribute to the outbreak of the American Civil War in the 19th century. Indigenous displacement and conflict. As European settlers expanded into the continent, they displaced and decimated indigenous populations through violence, disease, and broken treaties. Diseases such as smallpox, which the indigenous peoples had no immunity to, ravaged entire communities, causing death on a scale that wiped out significant portions of the population. Meanwhile, European settlers pushed westward, taking indigenous lands and resources, often through violent conflict. One of the most devastating examples of this was the Trail of Tears in the 1830s, when thousands of Cherokee and other Native American tribes were forcibly relocated from their homelands in the southeastern U.S. to territories in the west, in what is now Oklahoma. The road to independence. As the English colonies grew in power and population, tensions with Britain began to rise. By the mid-18th century, the British government had imposed various taxes and regulations on the colonies, such as the Stamp Act, 1765, and Townshend Acts, 1767, to recover costs from the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763, also known as the French and Indian War in the American colonies. These acts sparked resistance and protests, notably the Boston Tea Party, 1773, a protest against British taxes on tea. The tensions culminated in the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War in 1775, as the colonies fought for independence from Britain. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed, officially severing ties with Britain and establishing the United States of America. Post-colonial expansion. After gaining independence, the United States expanded westward, acquiring territories through treaties, wars, and the displacement of indigenous peoples. The Louisiana Purchase, 1803, the annexation of Texas, 1845, and the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848, played key roles in the nation's growth. However, the expansion also intensified the debate over slavery, leading to the Civil War in 1861. Legacy of colonization. The colonization of the United States has left a lasting legacy, marked by both great achievements and deep injustices. The country's founding principles, including liberty and democracy, are foundational to American identity, but the history of colonization also includes the exploitation of enslaved Africans, the systematic displacement of indigenous peoples, and the violent struggles for control of land and resources. Today, the United States remains a nation built on the foundations of colonialism, and its history is a continuing source of debate and reflection, as the nation grapples with the ongoing impact of its colonial past on present-day social, economic, and political issues.